Hi, this is Holly with Presence Point, and I am with Fred Douglas today. Fred is a friend. We've known each other for years. He's in the Oregon area, and I asked Fred to join us really after praying about how we at Presence Point and how shepherd leaders can address or help or support or stand up for a racial injustice. We are at a time in the US that I heard this morning on a newscast. It's a crisis in America, but I thought to myself, time out. It's apparently always been a crisis in America. Why aren't we paying more attention? So I saw a post that Fred put on Facebook a couple of days ago, and I was really moved by that. And that led me to begin to pray about what I do and how we as shepherd leaders stand up with this issue in a godly way. And so Fred's retired, but does a bunch of other stuff. He lives in Portland, and you can see beautiful downtown right behind him there. That's not out your window though, right, Fred?
No.
No, thank goodness for Zoom. So, Fred, I'm going to ask Fred the same three questions we always ask, but with a little bit of a different, I will say, slant. Okay. So, first of all, Fred, tell us where you shepherd.
Where I shepherd?
Yes.
I was the executive director of a youth organization here in the Portland area. And I was a part of that organization for 40 years, with the
Wow.
last 24 and a half as its executive director.
Wow. And how about home?
I have a wife and two sons who are now grown up and out of the house. Um,
Yay!
Matter of fact, I had to go rescue one this morning. He locked himself
Oh.
out of his car, and he works as he's a ER nurse, and so he gets off after a 12 and a half hour shift and was just wiped out and
Oh.
left his keys in his car. And AAA told him they could be there in an hour, so I had to go do it.
You
So
could be there in less than an hour, right?
yes,
So you're a shepherd husband, a shepherd dad, a shepherd of others and organizations and of kids, right, in the
yes,
world.
I still do
Yeah.
shepherding for teachers and a lot of business people now, and uh, my phone rings regularly. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? So,
Oh, very cool. And you sent me a link to, is it Daryl Davis, if I remember correctly, a video
hmm
that it was basically a TED talk. It was a kind of a local TED talk, TEDx
right.
talk, and so well done. And you gave me a beautiful insight into that as well. So, my second question is always, how do you implement provision, protection, and presence where you lead and where you shepherd? But I want to give us a little bit of a different slant to that. I want you to help us know, how does white America shepherd or lead well in the area of racial injustice? How do we provide, protect, and be present? How do we take a stand in a godly way? And I'd like to hear that from your perspective.
I think first and foremost, it starts with being present. In other words, connecting.
Mm,
Often, what happens is there's a dialogue that's really a monologue
mm,
because the white individual that's talking to the person of color, whether it be African American or Asian or whatever, uh, they have a way or an agenda of how they want things done
mm,
or how they want to communicate. And that's how they expect to receive the signal back because it's their radar. That's all they know.
mm-hmm.
Um, I often, when I speak to groups about racial relationships, I always refer to how my mom taught me to do laundry. And
Okay, this will be good. I'm anxious to hear this now.
people look at me like deer in the head, like, what? But there's a time to use bleach and a time not to. You separate the colors from the whites. And what happens often on the white side is they bleach everything relationship wise. They
Wow.
expect everything to be with their understanding, their perspective, their way of thinking, their mode. And if it's not, there's a problem.
Mm.
And the truth is you separate the white stuff from the rest of the stuff, and you're going to have a better basket of laundry because the brightness and the colors will come out of the clothes that are colorful. The things that are to be bleached will be whiter. But when you try and whiten everything, And now check this out. When I put bleach in with colors, it doesn't make them white.
Mm-hmm.
It destroys them.
Makes them dull.
Yeah. Or they go some weird color, like a off brown or something.
Yeah.
And people have to understand, when you bleach your relationships, that's what you end up with.
Wow. So I heard presence and I heard listening well, not with your normal attuned ear, but attuning to the other person.
Right.
And then I heard that we see things through our own lens.
Right.
So do you think we all do that
Oh,
at
every
some
person,
level?
we're wired to be that way.
Right.
It's we have to train ourselves on both sides of the color line to see it from another perspective.
Wow.
Our eyes are not necessarily prisms.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're single lens.
So how do we do that? What is your recommended way to help others learn to do that?
Well, let's take you and me, for
Hmm.
example. You know, when I connected with you, you probably don't even remember.
Oh, I might. Try me.
We were at a board meeting. It was
Oh, yes.
your first board meeting, and afterwards we were hungry, and three or four or five of us went out to eat together, and
Oh my
we
goodness.
sat in, oh, it was a sports bar or something along the, I don't remember what, but because it was late at night,
Yeah.
and we sat there and we didn't watch what was on the screen. We zeroed in on each other,
Yeah.
and it started with basic questions. So, where are you from? What do you like? What do you don't like? And oh, what made you choose that to eat? And all of a sudden, we started talking as two individuals that because you and I sat next to each other, we ended up talking for a long time about a lot of things, about the organization, about Christian things, about family. And we got, there's three levels of communication. There's honest, more honest, and most honest.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to most honest quicker than I thought we would. And the next time I saw you at the next gathering that we had several months later, we picked up right where we left off and just
Yeah.
kept going. And that's been 20 some odd years, almost 30 years, come to
I
think
think
of
it
it.
was 1999.
Yeah,
I think it was 19. That is so crazy. I can tell you why I remember that, but it's not important. But yeah, and the sweet thing is, every time we've seen each other, it's been like that. I mean,
yeah,
I can't remember now if we saw each other last at a conference or at a camp, but we immediately reconnected. It was like, oh, cool, Fred is here. We can hang out for a week. That's so cool.
we were wiping tables down at a
Yes,
camp.
we were together. That's absolutely true. We were work crew, I think, is what we were doing. That's a lot of work. But so it's really being yourself and caring enough to listen and ask questions and love well.
Right, because as two individuals get to know each other, their barriers disappear.
Yeah.
But then, because their antennas are up, they're thinking, wow, I didn't know that's cool that he would think that way.
Mm,
Oh, I can see that now. And then here's the big one. When we go through life's encounters, whether we're together or whether you find out about it through conversation, you suddenly hear my heart. You suddenly hear what concerns me or what I'm excited about. And, you know, my wife is white,
mm.
and she will tell people it wasn't until we were in certain settings that she suddenly realized how people treat me or how people respond. She said, I could sit back. We were on a interview together yesterday on Zoom, and she talked about the first time some friends had come out to visit from back east, and the, it was a white couple and that she went to college with, and we were in a Starbucks, and we ordered our drinks, and the two ladies had gone out ahead of the two guys, so we were still trying to figure things out. We're slow, and they walked out, and out in the courtyard was about 20 police officers on their coffee break or shift break or whatever. And her friend immediately said, oh man, we're the safest people in the world. And she said at that moment, she realized because of what she had encountered with me, Fred wouldn't think that.
Wow.
She didn't say that to her friend, but
Yeah.
she was very present and aware that this is not as rosy as it may look. There
You
was
know,
no problem, but that was
yeah.
just a moment.
Yeah, it was a realization. And, you know, I've had those moments with my husband as a female, right? So whether we're talking race, color, gender,
Right.
there are things we can't control or change, right? And it's the way God has created us and the beauty of that. And I remember when as over the years, I've told Doug, my husband, but you don't understand. You'll never get it. You've never been a woman. Well, I'll never get it because I've never been a person of color, right? But it's interesting because when he first saw it, sort of like your wife,
Hmm.
it was in a ministry setting, and sometimes in ministry people give more credence to men than women in leadership, and it's unfortunate, but it's some ways how it goes. And I remember when we were talking about Presence Point and the shepherd ministry, and the gentleman we were with turned his back to me and looked at my husband and said, "Tell me about what it is you do." And Doug said at that moment, he realized, oh, that's what you've been talking about all these years, because he saw it. We normally didn't have day-to-day all time together, right? And he very graciously said, well, actually, Holly is the co-founder and CEO. I'd recommend you speak with her. And of course, the man turned and was a little surprised and was very gracious. But that it was his go-to, right? It was his,
Yes.
and he wasn't trying to be nasty or mean or prejudiced. It was how he thought. So how
I
do
see it a
we?
lot being married to a woman who's a lead pastor.
Yeah, yeah, that I'm yes. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, there we are, right there.
Aren't we the great couple?
Well, you know what? Yes, I think you are. And that's the sweet thing about it is you can help open people's eyes. You know, I'm going to put the video, we'll put the link to the video sent me. Again, was it Daryl Davis? Have I said his name correctly?
Yes, Daryl. Yes.
Because what Daryl did is he went and met with one of the national KKK leaders, and they built a relationship, which was remarkable. And then it was even documented, I think, on either CNN or Nightline or one of these shows a number of years ago. But I'll put the link in this because what you're talking about is exactly what Daryl did. He just began to have a conversation,
Mhm.
and that opened up doors to him to information he didn't have otherwise. So, final question we ask, and what you've said is really helpful. Thank you, Fred. So, final question we always ask is what word of encouragement do you have to shepherd leaders? And so, in this case, what word of encouragement do you have to people like me who are wanting to not just go, "Hey, this is wrong," but really stand up and say, "Hey, this isn't okay, and this is not how Jesus meant it." And what's that word of encouragement you give us?
I would say be willing to stand up and stand in the gap.
Okay.
Um, if you recall in my Facebook post, I talked about a person who's very near and dear to both of us,
Mm-hmm.
John Peterson.
Yeah.
Um, in the role that I was in at the time, in where I was, the board of directors hired somebody from underneath me to be the new executive director, even though the executive director that left recommended that I take their place.
Mm.
And and I found out later from the best friend of the board chair why. There was two reasons. One, I was single, but I was 34 years old or whatever. And two, because I was a person of color and they didn't think the world was ready for a person of color to be in charge of anything. And this was back,
Two natural automatic disqualifiers.
yeah.
It just makes no sense. Okay.
And oddly enough, several of the other board members eventually came to me and apologized and asked my
Oh.
forgiveness.
Mm.
Not all, but several did. And so I didn't hear it from one person. I heard it from people actually involved. But anyway, John stepped in the gap and said to me, he said, because there was problems in Portland, he said, I want you to come here. You're really good at this, and I need that from my staff right now. If you'll come and be my assistant director, I will teach you everything I know. And because he's 6 years older than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you know what? Everything I know, you will know. And then you'll be ready to take a chapter no matter where you go.
Wow.
And at first I resisted, but he was relentless. I said, okay, I'll come. And so I went up there, and for 3 years, it was like two brothers that had been lost from each other for a long time.
Wow.
And that's how close we became. And then when the Portland office called and said, please come back. It was a brand new board with a couple of people from the past, and said, you know, everybody in the community, people speak highly of you. We need to turn this thing around. I said, okay. But then there was an overseer who was trying to recruit a white guy from a church of 30 people, small church, and he had no experience with the organization or what we did or anything. And he said, kept telling the boy, he's a better candidate. John stepped in at that point and said, you're wrong. What you're doing is wrong. And then he said, you and I and Fred are going to have a come to Jesus meeting, and you're going to hear his heart, and you're going to listen. And the three of us met in a restaurant for 2 hours.
Wow.
And he eventually apologized and said, I was wrong. But if John had not stepped into that place at that moment, because often what shepherd leaders do is say, oh, I got this black guy, he can work for us over there. And then they stick him out there. Or they go do all the work for them. John never did the work for me. He did it with me. And I learned how to do it from being with him. He let me use my ideas at times, because that's the biggest thing. When a person of color comes into an all-white office, he's expected to act white. If you've got multiple people of color in your office, it changes the office environment. Number one, it's a lot livelier and a lot louder, because people of color are very passionate. But the other thing about people of color, and I have to include Italians in this, we don't mind confrontation. I mean, I expect you to get in my grill if you see something you don't like. You go, what are you doing? What's your problem here? And I don't take offense to that. Most white people, oh, we got a problem, you know, because they're taught at some point in their culture, keep it quiet, don't worry about it, just find a way to get rid of them, or whatever. And I would say as a shepherd leader, that's going to be key, is to understand if you're committed to having people of color engaged in whatever it is you're doing, expect a culture change. It's a blend of your culture and theirs, not you taking on theirs and them taking on yours. It's a blend.
So there's a culture that makes us maybe act or behave differently, and there's also our own behavior styles, right? How we're wired,
right?
And also how we were raised. I mean, there's so much that goes into who we are, right? But there can be generalities that tend to give you some insight.
I had an executive director when I first started that you just made me think of something. He told me 2 years after I had been in the organization, he says, you know, I was going to fire you at the end of the first year. I said, really? He goes, yeah. I said, why? He said, you were never around the office. I figured you were a lazy son of a gun and you just weren't coming in, you weren't doing your job. But everywhere I went, after a while, people began to mention your name. And I suddenly realized you were out in the community doing your job.
Wow.
His perception of me was because he had no conversation or relationship with me over that course of time. It changed after that. But he suddenly realized he was not engaged with me. And so he had a perception of who I was.
Which can happen no matter the color of your skin, right?
Right.
We make assumptions all the time, and we know what that does, right? The saying. So
well, his motto was, no news is good news. That's not a good way to manage.
No. We all have so much to learn in that area, isn't it? I mean, we just have so much to learn. So the word of encouragement is to get out there, don't be afraid, open up. There's a combination. I want to go back to what you said earlier. It's listen. I mean, truly listen. Ask questions so that you can hear from the other person's perspective. Don't ask to hear, but ask to really listen and take it in and build a relationship so you can better understand. So, well, Fred, thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for even being willing to go down this road with me. I can tell you all that when I began to pray about this a few days ago, and when the Holy Spirit said to me yesterday, Fred Douglas, and he gave me 2 other names, and I've called those people too.
Good.
You know, and one is praying and one hasn't called back. So we'll see. Maybe you're the only brave guy out there, Fred. But it was good to know that we have a friendship where I could ask, hey, can you help me? I need to understand. I need to know what we can do. So we are grateful for you, Fred Douglas. We are grateful for the ministry that you have exhibited, the love in your heart, the willingness to step out into a hard place and say, hey, did you notice that? And we're grateful for our friend, John Peterson. I mean, for those of you who happen to be watching this who know John, you know that I'm probably swallowing hard right now. We lost John after 44 days of a cancer battle, really not that long ago, just a few months ago. And so he's in heaven celebrating where it doesn't matter the race, the color, doesn't matter the accent or the language. He is praising Jesus with, can you just picture that right now? That is just awesome. But we will be there one day with him. So thank you, Fred. We love you and we're grateful for you.
Love you too.
Thanks for going there with us. Take
Tell
care.
Doug I would help him with the weed whacking, but
I will tell him, but you're just not close
I've got
enough.
allergies.
There you go. I love that. Well, that's my excuse too, by the way. Thanks so much for joining us today for a Shepherds in Action interview. And may you all live deeply and deeply into your calling this week. God bless you.